Cool. Hey everyone, how's it going? Wow, thank you. Fans in the back, love you all. My name is Georgia. I'm so happy to be with you all today for the Outlook and share a little bit of the process of building at Figma. And at Figma, one thing that we like to invite into our process is a little bit of chaos by design. So let's get right into it. I'm based north of San Francisco, 3 hours up the road in wine country. It's beautiful. It's an area called Anderson Valley. And when I'm home, I'm usually exploring nature, or I'm training my 2 Australian shepherds, or my partner and I are learning how to make wine. These were grapes that we harvested last year. But I have a 9 to 5. And in my 9 to 5, I lead the product teams at Figma in our Creation Engine group. So you can think of those as sort of the foundational teams that support everything in Figma, from the canvas to how we make sure every single pixel is rendered perfectly, to how we save your work and version your work, and to how you extend Figma with things like plugins, widgets, etc. Now, let's get right to it. We don't have too much time, and I want to make sure that you leave this talk with the tools you need to be more productive, more innovative, and create amazing products that inspire and last. I know it's a tall order, but we're going to do it. Is everyone ready? All right, cool. So we're going to do something first to kick us off, and we're going to attempt something really, really impossible together. I'd like to invite everyone to try to lick your elbow. Can anyone here actually do it? Thank you. I have never, ever been able to do this, but my sister is double jointed and can do this with ease. As a kid, I was pretty chaotic, and I always had my tongue out in every photo, literally every single photo. I was really playful, a little bit uncontrollable, and my family and friends would describe me as an instigator, very precocious, and a troublemaker. Okay, so now you know who I am. I grew up in what some people would say is the middle of nowhere, but it's a rural town outside of Fargo, North Dakota in the US, which is central, north US, touching Canada. So I'm almost Canadian. You can think of me as friendly and a little bit too nice maybe sometimes. But this is my family's farm where I grew up. And when you grow up somewhere in a town of 34 people where you're related to 70% of them, you might be a little bored some of the time and develop some pretty unique hobbies and interests. So I had some pretty unique pets. This was my pet deer. Can you guess what her name was? Thank you. Yeah, it was. Not a designer, okay, but not very creative. My sister and I would always play all sorts of doodling games. This one was my favorite, where each of you draw one section of a creature without seeing what the person before you drew, and then you unveil this amazing creative mess. And I also used to love predicting the future of my family and friends with paper fortune tellers. Sometimes your future was better than others, depending on what you got, but it kept people entertained. So all that to say that I was a pretty chaotic child. I had a lot of energy to play, entertain, make up games, whatever it took. But I don't think I'm the only person who has this sort of innate creative chaos as a child. We start off with this limitless need to create, but with no specific objective or thing that we're trying to achieve. And I think as a result, every child can be thought of as an artist, and we love our little artists. But as we grow up, what happens to that chaos and where does it go? It sort of left me wondering, do I still have it? Am I still playful, or am I now just a super serious adult? And what I realized when I reflected on this is that as we're growing up, that energy, that chaotic energy, gets channeled into something. And it's different for different people at different points of their lives. But for me, I noticed that it started to get channeled into things like school. School was hard for me. So all my energy had to go into passing the test, learning the new subject. For some, as adults, maybe it's going into meal prepping. I don't know if people like how you do this, but I order food, I order takeout. That's my meal prepping. But this might be a way for you to set yourself up for success in your week, and as a result, take away some of the chaos you might have otherwise. And for those in product here, it might go into something like writing a PRD, or maybe 20 PRDs. Or last, maybe you're using it to create a system to get stakeholder alignment within your company. All of this to say that that energy is getting channeled somewhere to make you productive And as PMs, or people in product and design, our job is to take these unknowns, these problems, these things we need to solve, and make them known. We need to create delightful experiences, and we need to ultimately deliver outcomes. So as a result, we plan, and we remove the chaos from that process. But at the same time, we remove that sort of free form, exploration, unstructured time. And I really think that that takes away from the potential artistry of the product that you could create. So we need to get that back. And one way when I was thinking about this talk is, I keep using the word chaos, but I think some people might just call it play or freeform exploration time. But I like the term chaos for this because in physics, chaos theory is this idea where randomness, things that don't make sense, actually can have patterns and connections at the base of it. And so when I'm thinking about applying this to product or companies, it's really that you need to be able to be adaptable and embrace randomness. And the more you're likely to do that, the more likely you are to be successful as a company or a product org. And the proof is there. This is a stat from Y Combinator of the percentages of their startups who pivot. Okay, so as a startup founder, is anyone here a startup founder? No? Oh yeah, a couple in the back, cool, awesome. You need to be adaptable, right? You need to be able to shift to where you're gonna find product market fit. Same with product managers. If you ship something and it's not quite landing, you need to be adaptable to pivot and improve it so that it does resonate with your customers. I don't know if everyone knows this, but Figma pivoted. It was not originally a design company. And if Dylan and Evan, the founders, wouldn't have been open to shifting to where the market was taking them, who knows if I would be here today. The other piece is that developers have said that if they have this unstructured time, they create their best work. And that's really how we pull innovation forward. And then a non-related design or engineering stat, but you see this in jazz musicians. Musicians who are doing an improv performance are having 300% more novel neural connections than if it was a planned gig. So I think it's sort of planning to have the unplanned time is something that's essential for you to be innovative and actually a healthier person at the end of the day. But, you might not work somewhere that loves to give you unstructured freeform time to play or be chaotic. They want results. They want delightful experiences. So how do you get this? I've definitely been in roles where I didn't feel like I had the freeform time I needed to be able to build amazing products. And when I've gotten into that place and that mindset, I usually update my LinkedIn to say I'm open to something else. This is a potential solution, and I can't say that it didn't work because it did lead me to Figma. But it's not the only solution. And as I've reflected on this, I really think that you can't wait for your company to give you that time. You need to be that type of person and find other people in your org who want to create and be playful with you. But it did bring me to Figma, so it kind of worked out for me. And for the last 3 years, I've been able to benefit from the product culture and design culture at Figma that already inspires a lot of moments of play. Some of the things that Figma does are things like maker weeks. We have an entire week of our year completely open for people to build whatever they want to build. Literally everyone participates: finance, HR, product design, engineering, sales, etc. One year, I participated in making this quilt that I crocheted. I'm really bad at crochet. Another year, I made a feature I prototyped a feature that ended up shipping a year later called Preloading for Slides. And then another year, this most recent one, I made something I can't tell you about because it's coming soon, but I think you're all going to love it. And some of your favorite Figma products came from this process. Things like Figma Draw, the illustration product we just launched at Config, and Figma Slides. They were both concepted at a Maker Week and then evolved into a real product. Another unique thing I noticed that Figma does that I loved was we actually take a moment to extract ourselves from the rigor of projects, execution, and delivery to think of what we should name the thing, okay? So sometimes we come up with these code names or internal names for a feature, but we're not that intentional from the beginning because we want to just get the product started, right? But we work with our marketing team to pop out of the project and host a name storm, which is just a brainstorm for what we're going to name it. Many features from Figma have gone through this process and arrive at some names like FigJam, Dev Mode, Figma Sites, even Sections. You don't want to know what Sections was called before it was Sections. And at Figma, there are many ways that products come to life, but we do have some basics. Every product pretty much has a visual, whether that's a prototype made in Figma Make or a design or something to show people what you're going to build. And then we have a PRD to outline the problem. Oops, sorry. The PRD has the typical understanding of the problem space, the user need, the ROI we're going to get from this. But then there's a lot of other things that you can build around this. We do brainstorms. I like to call one the pie in the sky brainstorm, where I sit with my engineers and my designers and I ask, if we could build anything with no constraints, what would we build? This helps inspire a lot of ideas and helps us zero in on what's going to be most important for us. We also have a lot of customer conversations. I've been traveling the region this week, meeting with a lot of customers to get feedback on what we've shipped and new ideas that they have and want to bring to us. And then the last that's maybe a little bit unique is we actually carve out dedicated time to prototype, not just on design, but on engineering, to understand how hard is this going to be to actually build. And every product manager at Figma has a slightly different flavor of how they build products. But at the core, those two pieces of prototyping and PRD are there. And we really just want to make sure that we're delivering a product that is the right solution for our customers. In my role, I get to be more fluid between product, engineering, and design. And I've always loved designing and building myself. I'm learning to make wine. I love to get my hands dirty and try things out. I also like to have, a little bit of an encroachment on my designers, and I'll try my best to come up with something visual to get the idea communicated and started. I've also gone through and I did a developer boot camp when I was younger, so I have the audacity to talk with engineers, maybe in the way I shouldn't. But through these experiences, I've learned to embrace this fluid nature between product design and eng, and have found a lot of value in aligning with these partners early and just working in a way that isn't scoped to one role or the other. Right before I joined Figma, I was a little bit burnt out. I'd been doing product in a lot of roles. I updated my LinkedIn the way I showed you. And I actually did this program called The Artist's Way. Has anyone heard of this? Oh, yes, awesome. So The Artist's Way is a 12-week program designed to help artists become unblocked creatively. So it's most applicable for people like a writer who has writer's block or a painter who can't finish a painting. But I really wanted to go into Figma with my creative self realigned, and so I did this program. But we don't have 12 weeks. We are PMs. We need something quick and fast to get our creative energy back. So I've created a slightly adapted version of this called The Product Creator's Way, a small ways to reclaim your chaotic and creative self. It is by me, not an internationally best-selling author, but someone who has some tips for you and small practical ways to get back in touch with your chaotic creative self. Let's talk about it. So there's 3 components of this. There's the top 3, parallel paths, and chaos time. And the goal of these 3 is to help you reclaim some of your time back and then use that time to explore and play. The top 3 is the first step. Every morning, this is what my brain looks like. I wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to write that PRD. I need to write that message to someone. I need to move that initiative forward. I have no issue coming up with tasks to do for the day, but I get very overwhelmed with the amount. So what I do is I try to start my day 20 minutes before my first meeting, and I sit down and I write a massive fucking to-do list, like the largest to-do list I possibly can. Usually there's more than like 20 or 30 things on this list. It mixes work and personal, whatever I can think of, just get it down. And then I look at this list and I ask myself, what absolutely needs to happen today? And then I do something maybe controversial. I pick 3. Yep. I only get to pick 3 every day. I know, don't tell my boss, but this helps me surface what is the highest priority and highest impact thing that I absolutely need to get done today. If there's more than 3, I'll still pick 3 and I'll go tell someone who's number 4 or number 5 or reliant on me that I might not get to it today, so I can set that expectation early. If I'm not sure how to pick, I try to prioritize things by priority and impact. Priority means how urgent is this to get done today? Like, does it absolutely have to finish in the next 24 hours? And impact is, who is this going to unblock? Is this going to move an initiative forward 25%, 30%? You kind of can get that intuition of what seems important to you. And then I zero in on sort of the top priority, highest impact items. and I gotta start my day. So we pick 3 and we get going. What this does is it helps you have a sense of control in your day, so opposite of chaos, and helps you pick what you're going to do. So before I did this, I used to end my day feeling like I was super busy all day, but I didn't really get everything done that I wanted to. So I left my days feeling a little bit unsatisfied. With the top 3, it provides that little bit of structure so that I accomplish what I set out to, and I get a little bit of time back to move into the explore and play. Let's get into that. Let's talk about parallel paths. Parallel paths is an exercise to help you lean into play and explore other facets of yourself. I did this exercise about 4 years ago for the first time, and I just did it for fun, but now it's something that I think has really set me up for success in where I'm going. So how you do this is imagine all the possible lives you could have had. You're a PM, I'm a PM, I don't know what you are, but I'm a PM. What if I would have chosen something else? Could I have been an astronomer, photographer? Could I have been a shop owner or a chef? I like to write down all of these ideas of things that I would have been interested in exploring in a different life. And then I look at these and I ask, which of these are speaking to me? Which are jumping off the page? And while I love what I do, I think it's worth looking at some of these and exploring them for a little bit to see if they're interests I want to keep going into or see if they'll help me in my role as a product manager. And they have. I think the contrast to this is a lot of people think that you sort of pick your life path and you go down this lane and it's linear, but I think life is not linear. And it's going to be to your best interest to try to become a more well-rounded person with diverse perspectives and interests. That's the whole point of being a product manager, is understanding people. So I think you can be this person where you can be multiple things, and you actually should be multiple things because it'll make you better at being a product manager. So every year I choose an other path outside of product manager. I'm already doing that one. But I choose another path and I invest in that path for a year to see what it would be like to live that life. So I have a couple examples. Back in 2021, I started this exploration with trying to figure out what it would be like to be a photographer. My sister is a professional photographer, so I had a lot of nice equipment to borrow. And I loved seeing, engagement and wedding photos, and I just thought it was so fun. I want to be someone who captures those moments. So I captured a few. These are my friends who got engaged in Brooklyn. Not bad, right? These are my friends who eloped in Niseko, which was very fun. I got to go on a trip to Japan to take their photos. That's the other perk. But ultimately, I realized, photography is cool. I learned a lot about the technical aspects of cameras, but it's a lot of pressure to capture someone's perfect day, and it wasn't for me. But how I brought this back to my work is I encouraged other people at Figma who like to take photos and like photography to bring their camera when we're getting together for a team event and help capture the moment. This is amazing. A lot of teams don't do this, but then when you're celebrating a big event or an anniversary of your coworker, you have this repository of photos to share, and it helps build connectedness with your team. Another life path I wanted to explore was a farmer. Now, if you were listening earlier, you heard that I grew up on a farm, so I should be good at this, right? But I moved to California, and farming in California is very different. It's very organic. You live off the land, you live off grid, whereas in North Dakota, it's very industrial, okay? So I decided I should live off grid. So my partner and I packed up our SF apartment and we moved into a hand-built redwood cabin 3 hours north of SF, completely off grid, with no cell service. Okay, so you're really out there. And while we were living out there, I learned that Figma doesn't always work so well when you don't have great Wi-Fi. Yeah. And some days, I'd wake up and it was stormy outside and the Wi-Fi was out. So I would have to get in the car and drive 30 minutes to the nearest place that had cell service to get on a call. And that was just not sustainable, okay? So what I decided is that Figma needs better support when you're working offline. And so this inspired a couple customer interviews to understand, what are other scenarios where people are working offline in Figma and we're not covering what they need? It inspired some ships, like things like the ability to preload prototypes and slides, creating new files when you're offline so you can get that idea down even if you don't have Wi-Fi, and the ability for us to store more edits while you're editing offline. So if you're on a plane or something like that, you can still work in Figma. One use case I didn't think about, but ended up being amazing and benefited from this, is when you're at a conference, Wi-Fi is not amazing. And I didn't know this was going to be the case, but when we launched Figma Slides at Config in 2024, the Wi-Fi at the conference center in SF was not reliable. And I was so happy that we shipped this because we ended up using it for every Config presentation last year and this year. So my risky decision to explore this off-grid farm life ended up giving me more empathy for people who are working in low connectivity environments and actually delivered something really high value for our company and our customers. The last life path I want to tell you about that I've explored is the interest to become a winemaker. So back in 2023, I enrolled in a sommelier course. I was interested in learning about wine. I learned way too much about French wine law. It's so annoying. But I learned about how to taste wine and deductively decide what type of wine it is. And I did all of my studying by building out a FigJam to cover all of the countries and all of the different wine regions. Also, I'm very excited to be here because I need to try some Australian wine this week. But I brought this back to work by hosting some events with our team. Not everybody drinks wine, but I hosted a blind tasting with wine, beer, and NA beverages for the product team. And I made this fun little Figma tasting template and a little cheeky PRD about how to identify what wine you're tasting. And this brought connection to our team and was a great event to do with the folks who are visiting New York. So all of this to say is that the main point of parallel paths is to put yourself in a new scenario where you're doing something you're maybe not super comfortable with, but you're learning, and then you can figure out how to bring that back to your work. Another application at work is you can have interests outside of the scope of your role. So, my role is pretty broad, but I'm also interested in things like what Figma's doing in AI. And so I poke my head in and I might just go ask to learn and be helpful, and then eventually might be able to join that project. So just being interested in the world around you and following your interests with your intuition, I think will help you ultimately be a more well-rounded product manager. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is chaos time. Chaos time is really just that unstructured, free-form time to play and be creative. Again, to me, it doesn't have to be with any particular goal in mind, but you could use this time to explore maybe one of the parallel paths you chose. But the reality is we're all so busy, right? Like we're so busy. So we don't have that much time for chaos time. And so my recommendation, and something I've asked from all of my teams, is to schedule it. Put 30 minutes on your calendar, one day a week, for free form play. Highly recommend putting it as do not schedule or busy so people respect it. If people see chaos time, they might be like, Georgia, what are you doing? But if people see do not schedule or busy, they leave you alone. So give it a try. As a manager, this is something essential for all my direct reports, and we do this every week. Lucky for me, I also have a very creative sister who loves to play, and she created this deck of cards that has a playful prompt on each card. And so if I really can't think of something, or I'm too busy to go explore my parallel path or don't have enough time, I'll pull one of these cards and just do whatever it says for 30 minutes. Because she's my sister, she made it in FigJam. But they're really fun. You just lay them out, draw one at random, pick something, do it, and then journal about it if you have extra time, or doodle or whatever, until your 30 minutes is up, and then go back to your day. So do you remember earlier when I asked you to lick your elbow? That was the card that I drew this morning. And I was like, oh, perfect. I'm going to make everyone do this. Sorry. But it's just a simple thing just to invite a little bit of a moment of play into your day. Okay, so with those practices, you're able to get a little bit more of your time back, and then you're able to use that time to get back in touch with your creative self. Now, there are practical applications of ways you can bring this to your team and the impact that your business will see from you starting to adopt this stuff. So if you're listening to this talk and you're like, oh, Georgia, this is great, but how am I gonna explain this in my performance review? Here's some ways. The first is you can start your meetings with your team with a silly little water cooler to set a positive tone and invite someone to share something about themselves, be a little bit vulnerable. You might wanna warn them before if you're gonna ask them to dig up a photo from a decade ago. But this is something I did with a team of mine, and then I asked everyone, What was that version of you super ecstatic about at the time? What were they obsessed with? And it was cool. I learned so many things about my coworkers in that session. Another thing you can do is use your playtime to create a team logo or some brand identity for your team. Better yet, you can host a brainstorm with your team and ask them to doodle and come up with a logo themselves, and then ask people to vote for the best one, take it, run with it, create it, make it a Slack emoji, and then throw it everywhere. If you're lucky enough to get to host team events, don't just go to a bar or a restaurant. Visit an artist's workshop, or, make Yuki learn how to tuft and create a rug. Anything that gets that creativity going and can invite the opportunity for new experiences for you and your team. Incorporate comics and illustrations to highlight user pain points in your PRD rather than just, user needs and user problems. Visualize it. This was one that I did for preloading slides, to illustrate how stressful it can be when you're about to go on stage and you can't rely on your slide deck. And then, of course, Figma just launched this product called Figma Make. You can definitely use your playtime to prototype and build out really fun experiences like a digital music box or some interesting interactive buttons or a digital clock or interactive maps. This is a great way to use those 30 minutes. And ultimately, your business will thank you. I find that product managers who adopt play and chaos into their process, they ask better questions during user research. They're able to identify patterns that others don't see because you have a better understanding of different types of users and more empathy for those people. They also propose fresh solutions, things that feel actually innovative rather than just incremental. And last, I just find that they're more energized, they're more engaged, they're excited to work with their coworkers and share who they are and hear who other people are, which ultimately will lead to more job satisfaction and longer tenure. And the proof is there as well for revenue. If employees have this unstructured time, we're seeing an increase in what our company can bring in. We're also seeing higher engagement stats with employees because they're able to bring more of themselves and their creativity to their work. And then my personal stat is that I think when you're able to balance this chaos and structure, you're 100% more likely to build more connections at work and build meaningful products. So rounding it out, I have a challenge for all of you. It isn't about trying to become an artist or, the perfect product manager. It's about reclaiming that creative, problem-solving thing within you that got you interested in product or design in the first place. I don't think you can wait for your company to issue that 15% unstructured time. It's really up to you to reclaim your time, build a culture that supports that within your teams, and then eventually see where it goes. But I'd rather you just take this into your own hands and bring this to your team instead of waiting for the company to catch up. So try this out next week when you get back to work. Pick your top 3, schedule 30 minutes of chaos time, and jot out your parallel paths and pick one that you want to invest in over the next quarter. And just remember that the best products, they're not coming from the most perfect process. They're coming from humans who are working together. And I really believe you will have better products and your future self will thank you if you embrace a little bit of chaos by design in your process. Thank you.